Ever get that feeling like your brain's running on like Windows 95?
Yeah.
It mostly works, but then it blue screens when you try to process something complex, like, say, unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling.
Well, this week's deep dive into hacking the human OS is all about upgrading that mental software.
Oh, interesting.
Especially for boosting inclusion and well-being in our personal lives and at work.
Sounds fascinating. It's a really interesting approach because it uses all these like tech metaphors to explain how, our outdated mental programming can lead to some real world consequences.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We're talking microaggressions, burnout culture, the whole shebang.
And it's not just like bad vibes or hurt feelings either.
Right.
One of our sources, the British Psychological Society, their 2023 research.
Yeah.
They basically said straight up that unconscious bias creates inequalities systemically.
Wow.
Like it impacts hiring, promotions, stuff with a real impact on people's lives and careers.
Exactly. So it's about recognizing how these ingrained thought patterns, these biases we're often not even aware of, are actually holding us back, individually and collectively.
But here's the cool part. We're not talking about brain transplants or anything crazy like that.
Thank goodness.
The material emphasizes rewiring what we already have through 3 key upgrades.
Okay, I like it.
They call them debugging biases, upgrading identity settings, and installing empathy plugins.
Okay, I like those metaphors. So let's break those down a little bit.
Yeah, that's it.
Debugging biases. Well, it's almost like those biases are glitches in our mental code, right? A classic example is, have you ever heard of affinity bias?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Where we unconsciously favor people who are similar to us.
Oh, I've totally caught myself doing that. It's subtle, but it's definitely there.
Yeah.
You just gravitate towards people who remind you of yourself. And that obviously creates some blind spots when it comes to inclusion.
Absolutely. So acknowledging those biases is that first step. Then it's about actively challenging them and developing strategies to mitigate their impact.
So we've debugged a bias or two. What's next in this mental upgrade?
Well, the next step is upgrading identity settings. The material really challenges us to see identity not as like a fixed file, but as a constantly evolving folder.
Oh, interesting.
It's about recognizing that who we are is shaped by, a multitude of factors, really. Experiences, cultures, backgrounds, and that it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. Like I used to think, this is who I am, period. But embracing the fact that my identity is multifaceted, dynamic, it's actually very liberating.
It is. And that leads right into the third upgrade, installing empathy plugins. This is about bridging divides and fostering genuine connection.
Yeah, because when we recognize that everyone's identity is this complex, evolving thing, it makes it easier to approach others with curiosity and understanding rather than judgment.
Right. Precisely. It's about actively cultivating empathy, not just understanding someone's perspective intellectually, but actually feeling it on an emotional level.
Now, that's powerful stuff. But how do we actually put these upgrades into practice? That's where this Mindscaping concept comes in. And it's really interesting. It's about using these nature-inspired visualizations and exercises to rewire our thinking.
Yeah. Mindscaping provides a framework for applying these upgrades both personally and within organizations. Think of it as like a toolkit for personal and collective transformation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's start with the individual tools. The material mentions reflective ponds, guarded passes, and intersectional resilience mapping. Each of them uses a different nature metaphor, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it makes these concepts very accessible and engaging. Reflective ponds, for instance, encourage you to visualize challenges as ripples in a pond.
Oh, okay.
So instead of getting swept away by the intensity of a problem, you can observe it with more detachment, right?
Exactly, yeah.
That visual helps you create distance, gain clarity, and ultimately find solutions.
Okay, that makes sense. What about garden paths? How does that work?
Well, imagine your personal growth journey as a walk through a vibrant garden. Each stepping stone represents a milestone, a lesson learned or a skill developed.
I love that. It reframes personal growth as this organic process, not just like a linear path to a destination.
Right. And the garden metaphor also highlights the importance of embracing, detours.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Unexpected growth spurts, even those times when you feel like you've hit a weed patch.
Because even those weed patches teach us something, right?
Absolutely. They make us more resilient, more adaptable.
Okay, so we've got reflective ponds for clarity, garden paths for personal growth, and then what about intersectional resilience mapping? That one sounds particularly relevant to embracing the complexity of our identities.
It is. This tool helps you visualize your various identities as, well, imagine the roots of a tree.
Okay,
Imagine a tree drawing strength from the diverse soil of your experiences, cultures, heritage.
so it's about recognizing that all those different parts of ourselves are interconnected, nourishing each other, making us more resilient as a whole.
Exactly. And the more diverse and interconnected those roots are, the stronger and more resilient you become as an individual. It's a powerful reminder that our differences are not weaknesses, but sources of strength.
I love how visual all these tools are. It makes these concepts so much easier to grasp. But I'm curious about how Mindscaping works for organizations. Does it just scale up these individual tools, or are there specific techniques for teams and workplaces?
There's a whole branch of what they call corporate mindscaping, specifically designed to create more inclusive and equitable workplaces. One of the key tools is cultural consciousness circles, which harness the power of storytelling to build empathy and understanding across diverse teams.
Wait, tell me more about those. I love a good story.
So imagine a facilitated space where people from different backgrounds and departments gather to share their experiences, perspectives, and challenges. It's about creating a safe space for vulnerability where people can connect on a human level.
So it's not just about sharing facts and figures, it's about sharing lived experiences, right?
Yeah.
That can be so much more powerful for breaking down barriers and fostering genuine understanding.
Exactly. And that's where real change begins, when we start to see each other as human beings with unique stories and perspectives, rather than just colleagues or job titles.
And we've actually got some inspiring success stories about cultural consciousness circles in action, right?
Yeah, we do. One that comes to mind is Simran Sandhu, a senior procurement manager at Alstom. She described her experience with an Intersectional Cultural Consciousness ICC workshop as transformative.
Wow. What was it about the workshop that she found so impactful?
Well, Simran said it facilitated deep and meaningful conversations about cultural differences, which challenged her own assumptions and broadened her perspective.
So it was about more than just awareness. It actually shifted her way of thinking and interacting with others.
Yeah. And the impact went beyond just her personal growth. She actually went on to champion cultural change within her own team at Alstom, demonstrating the ripple effect these tools can have.
That's incredible. It shows how these seemingly individual tools can actually spark systemic change within organizations.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that our individual mental upgrades contribute to a larger collective shift toward a more inclusive and equitable world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already, from debugging biases to upgrading our identity settings to installing those empathy plugins. But before we go any deeper, I'm curious to hear what stood out to you as we've been talking about all this. What resonates most with you from what we've discussed so far?
You know what stands out to me?
Hmm.
The interconnectedness of it all.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can't really talk about inclusion without addressing those biases.
Right.
Understanding identity as, a dynamic concept
Okay, yeah.
and cultivating empathy. It's all part of the same ecosystem.
That's such a good point. It's not just about checking boxes. It's about understanding how these different elements work together to create a more inclusive and equitable world.
Exactly. And the Mindscaping tools provide a practical framework for actually putting those concepts into action.
Okay, so let's dive back into those corporate mindscaping tools for a sec.
Right.
You mentioned cultural consciousness circles, which sound amazing for building empathy.
Yeah, they are.
What other tools are there for organizations?
Another powerful one is what they call organizational mapping pathways.
Okay.
This involves a collaborative process of mapping out the organization's systems and processes. Things like hiring, promotions, performance reviews.
Yeah, okay.
To identify where biases might be embedded.
So it's about taking a systematic approach to uncovering those hidden biases that can perpetuate inequalities, even if no one's intentionally discriminating.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond individual awareness and actually changing the structures and systems that can, reinforce those biases.
That's so important because even if everyone in the organization has the best intentions, if the systems themselves are biased, it's going to be an uphill battle to create a truly inclusive environment.
Absolutely. And that's where organizational mapping pathways comes in. It helps you identify those systemic issues and then develop strategies to dismantle them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
So we've got tools for building empathy, addressing systemic bias. What about leadership?
Oh, yeah.
How does Mindscaping help leaders become more inclusive?
Well, there's a specific tool called the Leadership Reflection Framework.
Okay.
It guides leaders through a structured process of examining their own biases, uncovering their blind spots,
Yeah.
and ensuring that their decisions are aligned with the organization's, commitment to equity and inclusion.
It's about recognizing that leaders have a huge influence on shaping workplace culture.
Absolutely. And this framework provides like a roadmap for leaders to become more intentional and proactive in creating a more inclusive and equitable environment.
I love how practical and actionable all these tools are. It's not just about raising awareness, it's about giving people concrete steps they can take to create real change.
Right. And we've seen these tools work in real world settings.
Yeah.
Remember, we were talking about those success stories earlier?
Yeah.
There was one about a team that was really struggling with communication and collaboration because of like cultural differences.
Yes. What happened with that team?
Well, they decided to implement storytelling circles, kind of similar to those cultural consciousness circles that we talked about.
Okay.
And the results were remarkable.
Tell me more.
Well, team members shared their personal stories, experiences, perspectives.
Uh-huh.
And through that process, they were able to build empathy, break down barriers, and find common ground.
That's so powerful. It shows how creating space for vulnerability and authentic connection can totally transform team dynamics.
Yeah, it is. It's a reminder that inclusion isn't just about policies and procedures. It's about creating a human-centered workplace where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued.
Speaking of feeling seen and heard, let's circle back to those individual mindscaping tools for a minute.
Okay.
They all rely on these like vivid nature metaphors.
Yeah.
Reflective ponds, garden paths, intersectional resilience mapping. I think they're brilliant for making these concepts, well, accessible and engaging.
Absolutely. Metaphors have a way of like bypassing our intellectual defenses and speaking directly to our subconscious.
Yeah, it's like they create a shortcut to understanding. So let's walk through how someone could actually use one of these tools. Like, say, I'm facing a challenging situation at work and I want to use the reflective pond technique. What would that look like?
Okay, well, first, find a quiet space where you can relax and focus. Close your eyes and visualize that still pond we talked about,
Uh-huh.
the calm surface reflecting the sky. Imagine the stillness of the water.
Okay, I'm picturing it. It's so peaceful and serene.
Now imagine a pebble representing your work challenge. Gently drop it into the center of the pond.
Okay, I can see the ripples spreading outward, disrupting the stillness.
Good. Now observe those ripples.
Okay.
Notice how they expand and eventually dissipate.
Yeah.
As you watch them, ask yourself, what are the different aspects of this challenge? Who is being impacted? What are the potential consequences?
Wow, it's like I'm gaining a new perspective on the situation, seeing it from a broader viewpoint, not just my own emotional reaction.
Exactly. The ripples represent the impact of the challenge, and as they subside, you can start to see things with more clarity.
So it's not about ignoring the problem. It's about finding a way to observe it with more detachment so you can find solutions.
Precisely. The reflective pond exercise reminds us that even amidst challenges, there's an inner calm and resilience within us. And by observing the ripples, we can gain clarity, detach from that emotional intensity, and start to see potential solutions.
That's such a powerful image. It makes it easier to understand how mindfulness techniques can be applied to everyday situations.
And that's the beauty of Mindscaping. It takes these abstract concepts and grounds them in a relatable, nature-inspired metaphors.
Okay, so reflective ponds help us find clarity amidst challenges. What about garden paths?
Right.
How would someone use that technique to, guide their personal growth?
So imagine yourself standing at the entrance to this beautiful garden. There's a path laid out before you, inviting you to explore.
Okay, I'm there, the air is fresh, the flowers are blooming, and I'm feeling that sense of possibility.
Good. As you begin walking, notice the stepping stones along the way.
Okay.
Each stone represents a milestone in your personal growth journey.
So it could be a skill you've developed, a challenge you've overcome, a limiting belief you've challenged.
Exactly. And as you continue walking, notice that lush vegetation surrounding the path.
Yeah.
These plants represent your ongoing growth, your evolving strengths, your expanding potential.
It's a beautiful reminder that personal growth isn't linear, it's organic, it's ever evolving.
Precisely. The Garden Paths exercise encourages us to embrace those detours, celebrate the milestones, and cultivate a mindset of continuous growth.
And finally, we have intersectional resilience mapping. I'm particularly drawn to this one because it speaks to the power of embracing our multifaceted identities.
It is a powerful one. This tool helps you visualize your various identities as the roots of a tree.
I remember that image. A strong, sturdy tree with its roots drawing strength from the diverse soil of your experiences, cultures, and heritage.
Exactly. Each root represents a different aspect of your identity, and they're all interconnected, supporting and nourishing each other, contributing to the overall resilience of the tree.
And the more diverse and interconnected those roots are, the stronger and more resilient we become as individuals.
Precisely. It's a powerful reminder that our differences are not weaknesses, but sources of strength.
Okay, so we've explored these individual tools in more depth, but now I'm wondering, what are some of the challenges people might encounter when trying to implement these mindscaping techniques?
Mm.
Like, what if someone is really struggling to connect with those nature metaphors, or they find it difficult to visualize?
That's a great question. Not everyone finds visualization easy, and that's okay. The key is to find what works for you. You can adapt these tools, experiment with different imagery,
Oh, okay.
or even focus on the underlying concepts without necessarily doing the visualization.
So it's about finding what resonates with you and adapting it to your own needs and preferences.
Exactly. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself, be curious, and be open to exploring different ways of engaging with these concepts.
I love that reminder. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in terms of the individual and organizational tools. But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear what excites you most about the potential of, hacking the human OS.
Honestly, the thing that excites me the most is the potential for real systemic change. It's not just about, individual growth.
Right.
It's about creating that ripple effect that transforms workplaces, communities, and ultimately the whole world, really.
I love that idea of a ripple effect. It's like each person who upgrades their mental software contributes to this larger wave of positive change.
Exactly. And there's some really compelling research to back that up. Organizations that prioritize equity and inclusion, well, they see significant improvements in things like employee engagement,
Oh, interesting.
innovation, and overall performance, actually.
So it's not just like the right thing to do ethically, it's also good for business.
Absolutely. It's a win-win. I mean, when people feel valued, respected, and included, they're more likely to be engaged, motivated, and productive. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's about
Yeah.
creating that environment where everyone can thrive and contribute their best work.
And that's what hacking the human OS is all about. It's about recognizing the power of our minds to shape our reality and create a more just and equitable world.
It's inspiring to think about the possibilities, but for someone listening who might be feeling a little overwhelmed, like, where do I even begin? What's one small step they could take today to start hacking their own OS?
I'd say start by just paying attention to your thoughts, your reactions. Notice those moments when you're making judgments, assumptions, or generalizations.
Okay, so it's about cultivating that self-awareness, that ability to catch ourselves in those moments of bias or judgment.
Exactly. And once you become aware of those patterns, well, you can start to challenge them a little bit. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it really true? How is it affecting my behavior? That kind of thing.
It's about taking those micro pauses, those moments of reflection, to interrupt those automatic thought patterns that we all have.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, it's a process, right? Be patient with yourself and, celebrate those small victories along the way.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I'm walking away feeling, well, a renewed sense of hope and a whole toolkit of strategies for upgrading my own mental software.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And remember, this is just the beginning. The journey of hacking your human OS, well, it's an ongoing one filled with continuous learning, growth, and transformation.
So true. And for our listeners who are ready to take that journey, I believe the source material mentioned a few ways to dive a little deeper into these topics.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you're looking for more resources, tools, and insights, you can subscribe to the Intersection newsletter.
That's a great resource for staying informed and inspired.
Mm.
And for those who are ready to, take it to the next level, what else can they do?
Well, you can always schedule a free consultation to explore how ICC and Mindscaping can transform your organization or even just your personal life.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to know that there's support available for those who are ready to embrace this work,
Yeah. It's all about creating that ripple effect of positive change, one mental upgrade at a time.
Well said. Thank you again for joining us on the deep dive. Remember, bias is programmable, identity is a superpower, and empathy is an essential upgrade. Now go out there and start hacking your human OS for a more inclusive and equitable world.